This lecture, pages 102 through 115, picking up where the colonies in Great Britain are feuding a little bit. Trade works well, but they don't like or accept all of their roles or responsibilities. Both sides of the Atlantic, the colonies and the crown, liken the state to a family. States worked best when all members fulfilled their responsibilities just like a family. And so, as long as the colonies are doing what they're doing, the crown's going to be happy. And as long as the crown is doing what they're supposed to be doing, the colonies will be happy. Another popular idea uh, was that the government should reflect the hierarchy of organized society, and that was reflected in England by the monarchy and by parliament. The haves and the have-nots, all the way down to the people that don't have anything, but the haves are going to be the ones running everything. As the colonial society grew closer to the British model, but did have some differences. We will never have an aristocracy. Aristocracy are ones born with titles. We will not have that. In England, you are born the Duke or the son of the Duke or the great grandson of the Duke, and you'll become the Duke eventually of whatever. Just you are born with that title. We will never have that. A big distinction was between virtual and actual representation. The colonies had experienced actual representation, and they didn't like virtual. Virtual is that the parliament represents the colonies as a whole because they represent all Englishmen. Well, they don't have somebody that's actually in the colonies, and that's what actual is. Actually, somebody from their area involved in parliament, and this causes many problems and leads to disputes between the colonies and their colonial governors and with Parliament itself. It could have been squashed really easily by allowing Ben Franklin just to become a member of Parliament, and then they would have had a member and somebody there that was actually from the colonies. Most of the Atlantic coast is settled by the 1760s, so the new people are coming in. Of course, are going to have to go to what is called the backwater or back country. This is the frontier. German, Scots, Irish, English immigrants had to settle in this land. And they live as subsistence farmers, growing what they can to survive. Anything extra they have, they trade. But tensions start to grow between these backcountry settlers and the older seacoast communities because here you go. This is an example of actual versus virtual representation. All the people that are in the colonial legislators are from the seacoast communities. And there is nobody from the backcountry that is involved in the colonial legislature. Well, that's the same thing. And the people from the backcountry are saying, wait a second, in the grand scheme of everything, you want actual representation with the British crown, but you won't even give us actual representation in our own colony. Tensions also emerged when settlers encroached on Indian lands, and then we have Indians that are mad, and we have fights. The Spanish and British respond by expanding their territories to strengthen their relations with Native American people. They set up buffer zones to try to keep the English out. You can see here that the blue is where the English colonies are. You see the French are going to stop expansion. They're going to stop expansion of the English at some point, just because of where they are. They are on the St. Lawrence River, to the Great Lakes, to the Ohio River, to the Mississippi, all the way down to New Orleans, and then you have the Spanish over there in Florida and present-day Texas, California, and Mexico. Spain's fear of French expansion in the Southwest led to the creation of a buffer zone, as I said, in Texas and California, and Spain started to construct extensive forts and missions in California. I can't think of any major city in California that wasn't started by the Spanish as a fort or as a mission. But because of Spanish settlers not really being there, remember, they weren't there to settle, they were there to make money, and their coercive control of Indian populations left Spain at a disadvantage. This is all about the French and the British. And it's going to come to a head in more ways than one, but it's all about the French and the British. French, as we showed just a little while ago, followed the major waterways, St. Lawrence River, down the Mississippi, into the interior of America. They have forts, trading posts, and villages all along, creating a chain of way stations between Canada and the Gulf of Mexico. You have a day's worth of travel, and then there would be a way station there waiting for you for the British citizens. French Louisiana contained a diverse population, some plantations, but the French approach to the empire was based on Indian alliances. And they like to be the quote unquote bad guy. They drive a wedge between Florida and Spain's other mainland colonies, and they blocked English expansion. So they are just playing the antagonist in this game. Then come all the wars. We have King William's War, Queen Anne's War, King George's War, and then the 7 Years' War, or the French and Indian War. All these wars, and you have a chart in your book, and just show a chart in just a moment. All of them, there's a war that starts in Europe, it spills over into the New World. Okay, King William's War basically sets up legitimacy of both sides. Queen Anne's War first starts with the Spanish and the English, and the French get involved, and then the French lose Nova Scotia. And so, again, these are all really indecisive wars. King George's War and the French and Indian War are going to be the two big ones. European nations financed these wars on credit, creating huge funding debts, and in order to harness their military. But there is a growing debate in America about debt and increase in taxes, and we have this real Whig or country ideology that feared the growth of state power threatening liberty. Liberty meaning freedom. They're afraid that we're going to be taxed so much that we won't be able to have our freedom. The Iroquois League adopts a policy of neutrality in 1701. The Iroquois League is a political group of Native Americans, and they use their position to play the French and English against each other. King George's War is initially again between England and Spain, and France soon joined in on the other side, and the conflict breaks out in North America. And when it does, the French are appalled. The colonists are appalled that Louisburg is given back to the French. That was an English colony or English city. They're appalled, and then the English are appalled that that New York. The New Yorkers are selling to the French and the English. Well, it's all about making money. I used the example in class about buying tickets to a football game. I'm going to sell if I buy all the tickets that are there for the Texas Arkansas game, I'm going to sell my tickets to the Texas fans and Arkansas fans. I don't really care. I want to make money, and that's what New Yorkers are doing. So they have no real allegiance to either side in this debate. They don't feel a strong connection to England, even though they are English citizens. The French try to halt colonial expansion of trade with Indian allies by building a series of forts in the Ohio River Valley. So the Iroquois suffer from this because if the French will build up those forts and have better relations with the Native Americans, then the Native Americans will stop being with the Iroquois League, that political unit, which is considered neutral. So they lose some of their credibility there. But the Iroquois still just hang back, even though more Native American tribes are allying themselves with the French. Here's that chart I was talking about. So King William's War was the War of League of Augsburg, and it reestablished the balance of power. Queen Anne's War was the War of Spanish Succession. Britain gets Nova Scotia. King George's War, the War of Austrian Succession. Britain returns Louisburg to France, and Britain settlers begin moving westward, weakening the Iroquois League. The French also build their forts after this. And then the one we're about to talk about, the French and Indian War, 7 Years' War. And the end result, again, Treaty of Paris, 1763. The French are kicked out of North America. They get to keep their sugar islands. Britain gets Canada and everything east of the Mississippi. And the Spanish get New Orleans and everything west of the Mississippi. And Britain, the last thing they get from Spain is they're given Florida. The outbreak of war between France and Britain led to the Albany Plan of Union as the first kind of idea of us coming together as colonies as one. We always saw each other as separate colonies. We're going to worry about ourselves, but this is where they come together. It's rejected by the colonies, but it's still a step in the right direction. For the first 4 years of the war, the French are winning. But the tide turns in 1758 to the British, and that's when the Iroquois join in on the side of the British. They're waiting for everything to kind of settle where it's going to be, and then in 1758, bam, they join the war, which helps the British end up winning the war. Here's an odd picture, if you haven't seen this before, of Washington as a redcoat. The British victory of the French and Indian War created the impression that British armies were invincible, and they really are. They have the biggest and strongest navy in the world and the strongest and biggest army in the world. The Treaty of Paris 1763, again repeating what I said earlier, ended the French presence in North American mainland, even though they were allowed to retain their West Indian sugar islands. England received all French lands east of the Mississippi River except for New Orleans, while Spain received the Trans-Mississippian West and New Orleans. Britain emerged as a dominant power in Europe, and this map shows just how much land Britain gets and how big their New World possessions have grown to. Spain, of course, grows as well, but the French are completely gone except for really the island of Haiti is their the half of the island of Hispaniola, which is present-day Haiti. And that's it for pages 102 through 115.